Hey folks, welcome back. This is Chris live in central Pennsylvania with a special guest this morning. It's Andrea. And Andrea, I'm going to have to apologize because we were putting the banner together and I don't want to misstate your last name. So welcome to the program. If you could tell us your last name. And you're here with a group called the Amerikaners. Not to be confused with Americans and Afrikaners, but maybe it is to be confused with that. Good morning. How are you this morning?
Thank you so much, Colonel, for having me on. It's a great honor to be able to speak to you. If I can just give a little bit of background about myself, I am an American citizen, but also an Afrikaner. I moved to the US about 12 years ago, and the Afrikaner cause has been something very close to my heart. And so I was actually very recently on vacation in South Africa, and I was just scrolling around on X, and I found this group called Amerikaners on there, and I was like, hey, maybe I can contribute a little bit to their website. Of course, Sam at Amerikaners recently, came up with the idea, and it was just really a way to give Afrikaners who wish to take President Trump up on his offer of resettlement a bit of resources. Perhaps something about how is life in the United States, how to apply for US financial aid. So really my goal at that stage was just to help write some articles, contributing in that way. But really Amerikaners has kind of evolved in something a lot bigger. And we can talk a little bit more about that if you want to.
Well, absolutely. But we've got to take care of the important stuff here first. First, I need to ask this question. Before I answer the question, someone in the chat asked me a question already. Said, do I have a wife and kids? Yes, I have 16 wives living in 13 countries spread across Africa. I'm single-handedly browning Africa on my own. And I need super chats to pay for the Ebola. It's killing me. So feel free to super chat any moment there, folks. We'll take the super chats. It goes to a good cause to help with Ebola. Now, the question I want to ask is the important question here. Are you a boermeisie? Tell me.
Ja, ek is 'n boeremeisie. Although I am married to an American, but I've taught him a little bit of Afrikaans, only the important stuff, like my wife is beautiful, my vrou is mooi. But he has also told me...
That's not the important stuff. Nice try.
But, he also told me that Americans only have 2 language slots. And so he was deployed in Norway for a long time. So over there, he learned Norwegian. So he said, if I had to really learn Afrikaans, I'm going to have to get rid of some childhood memories to, make some space for the Afrikaans. So he told me he's maxed out for language. So I guess that's where we're at with that.
Yeah. Well, okay. First, let me go back to the gentleman or lady, whoever asked questions. It's a serious question, just a question. Serious answer, just a serious answer. If you heard of doxing and swatting, if I'm married or not married, it's nobody's business. That's not for people to know about because it's a dangerous world full of idiots out there. So back to your husband. So I see he must, sounds like he's one of those guys that had life easy. Norway, was he in the chair force? Did he serve in the chair force? What's going on?
That's correct. He's a chair force officer, if you will, but he's also served in Afghanistan. So I guess that's a little bit more serious. He's been on many combat missions. He's an F-16 pilot, but now he says he flies a bus. He flies just for a airline here. So he's not flying F-16 anymore, but he misses those days quite a bit.
No, I understand that. It's a lot different. A lot of pilots go in the military like, oh, I want to fly for an airline one day, and they don't think it through. It's a lot more exciting to fly an F-16, an F-18, even an A-10 is a lot more. Even it lumbers along is a lot more exciting than flying commercial, and you get to do a lot more crazy things. So, someone says, can she praat Afrikaans? I said, well, ek praat nie Afrikaans nie. Ken jy? Kan jy?
Ja, I can Afrikaans praat. I speak Afrikaans to my parents. Like I said, I can't really speak Afrikaans to my husband. And my child, she has only limited vocabulary too, of course, because, we don't really get to practice with her that much. But yes, to answer your questions, ja, I can Afrikaans praat.
There you go. Okay. All right. So I'm not going to delve more into those questions, but I just think we got to get your bona fides up there because people might be asking the question because you have kind of an odd accent in English for an Afrikaner. Yeah, usually you can tell. So people are trying to figure that one out. Okay. So you live here in the States. You've been here for 12 years, married to an American. and you are part of this organization called the Amerikaners. Now, they predate this President Trump event here. So what was it, a social organization to help South Africans who were living in America, or do you all get together for braais once a year and, in Oklahoma or something like that? What's going on? What was Amerikaners before President Trump came back in office?
I wouldn't say they predated, as far as I understand. Like I said, I've recently joined them. I wouldn't say they predated President Trump's EO. So our founder, Sam, she's a fantastic lady. She's actually retired. She's run many successful businesses, but her idea with this was, like I said, just to provide Afrikaners who would like to make use of President Trump's resettlement program resources regarding documents maybe that you would need for refugee status, helpful articles. And really that's kind of how my angle came in. I wanted to contribute to their website. So yeah, that's pretty much where it started.
Are you like a webmaster, or are you just a stay-at-home mom? Or are you a graphic artist? Are you an astrophysicist, or just an interested party?
Interested party. My background is in statistics, but I really just wanted to give my perspective as a person who immigrated here. Some of the challenges I faced, things I didn't know. When you move to a new country, you're almost like an infant. You have to relearn how to do a bunch of things, learn about something like a credit score, how to apply for, like I said, loans or open a bank account. So really my angle was just, to provide some helpful resources and write some articles. But to answer your second question, yes, my background is in statistics, but right now I stay at home with my daughter. And like I said, my husband flies the bus. So that's where we're at.
Well, that's appropriate. Air Force bus driver. That's exactly what we're going to say. We'll leave it there. But no, seriously. All right. Well, that's helpful to understand a little bit about this. So, for me, I'm getting asked, you've probably seen some of the broadcast, 18,767,000,000,000 questions per day from people who are interested. And it's understandable. And I've tried to be very patient. Some people have very thin skin. Why are you upset? I've answered that question 5 minutes ago, literally. Please go back and watch the last 5 minutes. So, people ask all kind of questions, and they're legitimate. They have concerns. But I've never immigrated to America. I'm an American. However, I've lived virtually every state in the lower 48, and so I've moved. I know what it's like to move, and I know what it's like to get reestablished. And I've lived in 16 foreign countries, so I know what it's like to be a fish out of water in a place where you are a minority by faith, by skin color, by language, or some of us are devastating handsome. People around us aren't, so be a minority in that respect too. But so a lot of this stuff is familiar to me, but I've never immigrated to America. So some of the questions people have sometimes catch me off guard. Now I get when somebody says, "Well, can I get a loan?" Well, in order to get a loan, you have to have a credit score. Yeah, but I have credit in South Africa. Yeah, but that doesn't carry over here. You have to start fresh. And the good news for us is that Arctic, who's a pilot who works here in the States and goes back and forth to South Africa, he's recently, in the last 2 years, come over here with a permanent green card and flies here. And so he knows exactly the process. He also knows the painful, expensive process of going through a lawyer, which costs a fortune. And all these people are being misled in South Africa by the media intentionally. You'll live in FEMA tents. FEMA doesn't deal with refugees. You don't know what you're talking about. Only young people go. Oh, here are my skills. We don't give a flip about your skills. You came as an immigrant. We could talk about how you came if you want to, but we're talking about refugee status. We take the broken, the fixed, the repaired, the crazy, the not so crazy, the attractive, the hideous looking. It doesn't matter. Your life is in peril and you're being offered a lifeline. That's what that's all about. And people don't seem to grasp that. I understand why. I think a lot of it has to do with the misinformation, the intentional disinformation that's coming out of the media and out of the government in South Africa. It's shocking to me, Andrea. Ronnie Lamola, who was a failed, minister of justice, or injustice as I prefer to call him, he failed at that job. Now he's the foreign minister, and he runs around and he speaks to Deutsche Welle. He says, well, South African whites own 80% of the land. Well, that's demonstrably provable. It's factually incorrect simply by looking at the land audit of 2017, not even parsing the data, not even analyzing, just look at the data. And then he says, well, America, every country has expropriation without compensation. That's a lie. The Fifth Amendment expressly prohibits the government from taking your property without compensation, and it has not been amended. And so people believe this nonsense. So let me ask you this question. How did you find out about my channel? And, at the risk of my guest embarrassing me, how do you find my channel? Because a lot of people black supremacists and white leftist lunatic liberals come on and accuse me of spreading misinformation, which of course is nonsense. But tell me a little bit about how you found the channel, and if you want to comment about anything I just said.
Yeah, to be honest with you, Colonel, the way I found your channel was through a lot of Afrikaners that have been sharing, your videos with me, and especially very recently, like you've mentioned, you've talked a lot about refugee programs, you've moved around, you have a lot of knowledge. And so I started watching your channel, and I looked at your bio and I realized, oh, okay, you're an army guy. So you have a lot of knowledge of, war, instability, things like that too. So that's pretty much how I stumbled on your channel, and just rest assured, I will keep watching your channel. I get like really good information from you as well. So yeah, and I've been monitoring your channels too for questions that I think would, be useful for people that are subscribed to the Amerikaners.com website, or questions that we can maybe also try to address on our X Spaces, which we've been running with many very, very helpful Americans that have contributed to that, as well as a doctor. Her name is Dr. Benedict. She's actually a professor in anthropology. And she's been providing very, very good resources for, concerned Afrikaners who, don't really know, like you said, people are panicked. They don't really know how this, will impact them. Will they qualify? How do they go over, et cetera, et cetera. So yeah, your channel fit in with what we, have been doing. And that's how I started watching your content as well.
Okay, so let me put this out there for my longtime listeners, and that's only about, right now, about 15% or 20% of the audience right at the moment, because all the people come recently. I'm not here to encourage anyone to leave South Africa. I'm heartbroken that anyone would feel the need or desire to leave South Africa. It's such an amazing place, but I get it. I understand. I can empathize. But a lot of people are falsely reporting that I'm your refugee guy. No, I'm an independent, objective journalist, and I'm trying to give you the facts and information on both sides. Whether it's good or bad, I'll tell you. And for those who take umbrage that I talk to this person, that person, you can hit the road, Jack, take it on the arches, because as long as a person isn't an avowed racist, I will talk to them if they're newsworthy, because that's what a real journalist does. I'm biased. We're all biased, and I admit my bias. Capitalism is the best system ever invented by humans for economics, and representative government is the best form we found of the ugliest forms of government so far. And that's my bias, America's greatest country in history. Moving along. I am, however, objective, and I will call people out for their BS, including people that people think that I back and support. Who I back and support is my personal thing, but I do this to enlighten the world and bring people the news. What I try to get people to do, Andrea, is to think for themselves. I tell people all the time, you don't have to believe me. It's fine. I'm giving you analysis. You have the benefit of 4 decades of the highest level intelligence analysis and experience on multiple continents, languages, cultural immersion, peace, business, war, take your pick, all kinds of things. Access to presidents and kings and generals and admirals and everybody under the sun and prime ministers. And you can take it for what it's worth. It doesn't make me right, although I am right almost all the time. But it doesn't make me right. But the point is that if you listen, and you can go look, I tell you where to go. As people keep talking about this refugee program, and I say, here's the executive order. Where does it say white in here? It doesn't say white. Where does it say farmer? It doesn't say farmer. Where are you people getting this stuff from? Well, Chris, you're wrong. Okay, maybe I'm wrong, but until the U.S. government defines what an Afrikaner is to the U.S. government, we don't know. Are you getting a lot of the same sort of stuff in your organization there, Andrea?
Yes, absolutely, Colonel. And just to kind of segue from what you just said about the people's uncertainty about who will qualify for the refugee program. So, as you may know, where this whole media frenzy started around the EO was after the Solidarity movement, went to Washington with their own memorandum, and basically what the South African media got from that. I'm not saying this is what they said, but what the South African media got out of that meeting was that all Afrikaners rejected President Trump's offer of resettlement. And so, the Solidarity movement, you can say, probably represents about 1.5 million of the 4.5 million, shall we say, people of European descent in South Africa. And we like to think that we are representing the 2/3 of people that aren't part of that movement. And really, the reason why we wrote this memorandum and are trying to distribute it is we are advocating for a broad implementation of President Trump's EO. Like you've mentioned, Colonel, we don't really know who will be considered for the program, but in our broadest definition, we've defined the Afrikaners, or how we've coined the term Amerikaners. It's people of European descent who have heritage in French, German, Dutch, and English. And as you know, Colonel, people, unfortunately, I have to say it like this, but the way the laws work in South Africa is if you are a certain color of, Home Depot sampler white, you are being discriminated against in South Africa, whether that be in tertiary institutions, business, and like you mentioned before, the Land Expropriation Acts. So we are trying to advocate for a broad definition of what would be considered an Afrikaner. And like you mentioned, we just don't know. So if there's any way we can influence policy, that's really our goal. We are trying to advocate for those people. And we have over 15,000 signatures at this point. So how our system works is on our memorandum. When people sign, they will indicate how many family members they represent. So it's approximately 1-to-5 ratio. And all of these people would love to take, President Trump up on his generous offer. And so this is really the message we're trying to get out, that there is, I think, a majority of people that actually do want to take President Trump on that offer. And so, like I said, we're just trying to help get the message out there about that.
Well, I will say something here. You're being very neutral, but I'll be quite honest from what I've observed. It's not accidental. It's not by mistake. It's willful. It's intentional. And the perfect example of this is that there was an agricultural fair in Berlin, and the Department of Agriculture with John Steenhuisen went, and Agri-SA and SAAI both went representatives. We saw Theo de Jager from SAAI go there, and they were all there. They have photographs. I had just interviewed him, and this was around the time, was it before or right after the executive order? It was sometime around there. And Theo de Jager went to Berlin before that. They came back. Peo the Seed magazine from the Department of Agriculture was produced. And the group photograph in Berlin with the South African delegation, he was photoshopped out a la Stalin, like they used to do to political opponents after they murdered them. Yeah, so this is not accidental. This is a concerted propaganda, disinformation campaign being put on by people. I'm not saying the government of South Africa is doing it, but there are people that work in the government that are intentionally doing this, and maybe they're not under control of the government. We know how rogue bureaucrats act. Look what they did to Trump in his first term, people in the bureaucracy. So there are people in the South African government who are intentionally, they just wiped him out. Theo de Jager just erased his picture. Very bad photoshopping, by the way, but it was pretty obvious. But I have the original digits. I have the provenance of the photograph, and I expose that. And so that's just an example of what's going on here. It's willful ignorance. It's intentional. It's not a mistake. It's not happenstance. There are a group of people in South Africa who hate South Africans, other South Africans, based on their skin color, because their warped view of world history, not understanding what's actually going on. And they are, at the same time, angry that some people might want to leave the country. It's a psychotic world that some of these people live in. So our definition is a little bit different. My definition of Afrikaners is a bit broader. I include people in that who speak Afrikaans and are Afrikaner culturally, and they may have brown skin and they may be colored or Indian, and so it's a broader definition. Now, I know some people, their feelings get hurt. Get over it. That's my definition. It's not you deciding who Afrikaners are. It's not me deciding. It's what the U.S. government will decide. So until we have that answer, we have to wait and see. But a lot of assumptions are being made. I did tell people when I broke this story on the 7th of February, President Trump put his executive order out, and like less than 2 hours later, I just went live with what little information we had. 38,000 people tuned in. The only reason that I ended the broadcast after 3.5 hours is because Gareth Cliff asked me to come on his program because he went live. And so I went live like Gareth. Then I came back and did another broadcast that night. And I told people from the very beginning, number one, to watch out for scammers. And number two, I said, we don't know who they're defining. And I suspect, because all these English speaking South, oh, what about me? Woe is me. India. Oh, what about us? We're screwed too. They hate us too. Okay, I got that. I empathize. But until we know, We don't know. And I said, it says Afrikaners who are suffering unjust racial discrimination. That could be a large group. It could be a very narrow group. Of course, you always get the, Boers and Afrikaners. We're not Afrikaners. So you get that nonsense too. So I said, look, they're likely to say ethnic minorities. And then the embassy on Monday did say ethnic minorities. Now, they pulled back from that. So until they come out of the program, we just don't know. And people need to take a deep breath.
Absolutely, Colonel. I think you're very correct in that analysis. We just don't know. But like I said, we're trying to advocate for a broad group of people. We had to put down a definition, and that's pretty much what we thought was the best definition. Like you said, we've also had many people reach out to us saying, well, I'm Afrikaans, but my wife is English, or, I'm colored, I speak Afrikaans, people like that, so there is a lot of concern out there, and a lot of panic. But you can understand it, Colonel, because, these are people's lives, like you said before, I'm also biased. I think America is the greatest country on earth. And if at all you have the opportunity to come over here, I think you should grab it, and I think the Afrikaner people are a great fit for this country, being from Christian background, hardworking, and I can share so many success stories with you of people that came here with virtually nothing that have made huge successes of their lives. I think it would be a great asset for this country. We were trying to help a large group of people, and so we just encourage people to sign our memorandum. And like I said, we are not a lobby group, so we only have traditional routes of getting, our memorandum distributed. We're citizens, so as you know, we have routes through our congressional representatives, maybe like USCIS field offices. People like you, Colonel, you have a large following. If our memorandum gets out there, there's, obviously a higher probability that somebody would pick up the story and be willing to talk about it. That's really our mission. And I feel like it's a very good cause. And like I said, I think it would be a really great asset for our country as well.
Well, and when you're saying our country, you're talking about the U.S. Yeah, because you're an American now.
Yes, no, exactly. No, that's part of the reason why I'm advocating for it, because, if you think of, Colonel, you've covered this in great detail, but, the migrant crisis we've had here, and the type of people that were led into this country illegally, not, criminals, that, people that can't really, contribute much to our society. I can vouch for my people and say that, I think they are fantastic, and I think they would be phenomenal here. And I think they make the perfect Amerikaners, is what I call them. They make the perfect Americans.
All right, so let me clear a couple things for my audience. Number one, what Andrea is talking about migrants, there's no such thing. A migrant is a legal status. Those are people like the H-2 Alpha folks who come here, work for 6 months legally on a migrant visa to do work. They come, they stay, they obey the law, they go home, and we welcome them. They're fantastic, whether they come from Mexico or El Salvador or South Africa. Wonderful. The media are falsely portraying criminal alien invaders, people who violated our sovereignty, invaded our country, as migrants and immigrants. They're not immigrants, they're not migrants, they're criminals, they're felons, and I don't care if they're 12 or they're 27. They came to this country illegally, they have no business being here, they should be deported forthwith. I can't just rock up in Norway because I think Stavanger's a lovely place and I'm going to hang out there. It doesn't work that way. It doesn't work that way. All right, so there's a couple things in chat, and one of the things I do, and that's why I do this. So this is not directed to people in the chat, so don't take offense and have a thin skin and run off because, the Colonel's picking on me. So I'm not picking on you. But already here, we've got some false information here. Someone said, remember, the refugee system has been suspended for review for 90 days, which is only 27 April. Then it will be reviewed. So we have to wait and hope something happens to change this. Well, that's your analysis. That's your opinion. That's not a fact. The 20th of January, the president suspended the entire refugee program because of widespread fraud by the Biden regime for 90 days for review. On the 7th of February, he issued a subsequent executive order which overrides that for South Africa. Now, they may be holding it. We don't know. No one has interviewed the Department of State or Homeland Security, and they aren't telling anybody. I know people in those places, and they aren't speaking. And so you're making an assumption. The possibility is very real that after those 90 days, there might not be a program for Afrikaners yet because they're still working through the legalities of it, or they might introduce it next week. So you shouldn't make statements like that. I don't go with speculation. I can give you speculation, but then I'll give you the basis for it. So don't assume that, folks, because then people just run off and go, oh well, nothing. You know, it's you need to be careful what's going on here. So anyway, I thought I'd share that, not picking on that person, but just saying that, you know, hang on a second here. What's this? Ugh, we got trolls in the chat. Sorry about that. Okay, so tell us a little bit about this. You've got a website. We don't have the link in there. Folks, this was a short notice setup, and then Andrea, you know, she's a mom and she's got other stuff going on. And so I didn't get my normal banner up and social media links put into the video. They'll be put up after the video if you want to go check it out. And so I take it now that I've had Amerikaners on here, I'm going to lose all my audience because they're going to go to your website and forget all about me.
I highly doubt it. I think they're subscribed to both at this point.
So tell us a little bit about the website and what's up there. What can people find?
Sure, Colonel. So at this point, what we have on the website is a little checklist of, you know, things that you potentially may need. Of course, as you say, it's speculative. We don't know how the refugee program will be implemented or what would be required. Think of things like unabridged birth certificates, et cetera, et cetera. But the more, shall I say, useful things at this point is we have come up with budgeting charts that basically outline what your typical lower, middle, and higher income jobs would be like in the US, and then comparing them to the average cost of living. So think utilities, car payments, housing. So I think that's really useful for people to kind of gauge where they may be. Of course, as you know, a refugee program may offer some financial assistance in the beginning, but this is just for people to be able to tell, okay, listen, this is what I plan on being. I want to go into law. So this is typically what you would have as a salary and as a lawyer, just on average. Of course, it differs in different states, but it's very useful. And then the new thing we've been working on is kind of like a GIS type map that basically has locations. So we have different states. So it's a state map. And then we have basically average temperatures, what those places are like. And then what are like the hot industries in those places? So think of like, California tech or whatever. So it's just, a useful resource for people to use and say, where do I want to go? That's kind of like what I had a problem with too when I first moved here is you are like, the US is huge. Okay, so where do you even go? You may want to do something, but you like a certain climate or something like that. So that's pretty much what we have up there. But we are working on more videos and also articles. Like I said, one thing that really confused me a lot was FAFSA, which is the US financial aid. And so I'm going to be writing an article and doing a video and like a step-by-step, like how do I apply for US financial aid? And FYI, for people who are curious, if you are a refugee, you do qualify for US financial aid. It's called an eligible non-citizen. So you are actually able to apply for that. Obviously, just a word of warning. US education systems, universities are incredibly expensive, and you want to be very careful when you take out loans to be able to pay them back and make sure you're not getting, a basket weaving degree and expect to get a job. So that's really important too. And I do plan on putting some information up there too about, and maybe Colonel, you can probably contribute to this too, if you like, military routes, if people feel like joining the armed forces, when would they be, eligible to do this? Because of course there are good benefits through that as well. Is that a good career option? Stuff like that. So that's pretty much what we've been working on and what's up there currently.
Well, I have to rubbish everything you just said. I think my queer studies and general studies degree has served me quite well. It's helped me get a $500,000 a year job as a DEI consultant for Chevron. So thank you very much for your input, but no thank you.
So I'd have to ask you, what are your pronouns, I guess, right?
Fucking off. No, but seriously, sorry for the profanity, kids. Hopefully aren't any children listening. Listen, it gets incredibly frustrating, I guess, because people are always finding things. And so, Andrea, like right now in the chat, someone just said, well, can older people go? Oh, dear goodness. Now, this is not directed at the person in the chat, but for the 1 billionth time. So what the Amerikaners are doing seems like a very helpful service. From on the surface, I'll have to investigate it further. I know as much about it as my audience does. I mean, I'd heard about it, and you asked to come on. You seem like you can walk and chew gum and like an honest person, so we're talking. But usually, I usually know a lot more about the people I'm interviewing than they realize, and so I don't have to prepare for interviews. So because I know, but in this one, I didn't really have to prepare for because I know what we need to talk about. But I mean, it's interesting that that these people coming in here and they're asking these questions. I realize they're new, but I mean, the things you're putting up from Amerikaners is very helpful for people to understand what it's like to go someplace, maybe what you can earn, what the big challenges are. That's fantastic to help people adjust. And that's why the U.S. government spends $2.7 billion a year on average for refugee resettlement in America, for 300 plus non-government organizations that help you get settled in, get you a sponsor, help you get your driver's license, translate your qualifications into American, that sort of thing. But folks, this is not immigration. She came here as an immigrant, okay? I'm not rubbishing what she's saying. You have to understand, she came as an immigrant. Her experiences will be invaluable for you to understand what it's like to be a foreigner coming to America. That's a fact. And she can probably, if she's willing to tell you the pain, what it's like to become an American, the process she went through to become American, that will be invaluable. However, she was not a refugee. She didn't come here as a refugee. We don't take refugees from South Africa. You are being extended an unbelievably generous offer. And people, oh, what about my budgie? What about my cats? What about my Porsche? Okay, listen, guys. Most refugees are living in camps in Chad, fleeing from Darfur, or living in Uganda, fleeing from South Sudan, or living in 650,000 people in a 35-year-old refugee camp in tents in Kenya from Somalia. Those are most refugees around the world. They're processed by the United Nations High Commissioner for Refugees, and then they are given on a list to the United States. Then we vet those people, and we let 30 to 150,000 in per year. But that's just a general statement. There are exceptions. Cuba, Bosnia-Herzegovina, and now South Africa, what we call in-country refugee resettlement. Legally, you're not a refugee unless you fled your country of origin because you're persecuted. So if you flee from South Africa to go to Zimbabwe, just having a little fun there, you could claim refugee status. Now, you might not get it, but anyway, the point is that's how you normally do it. In this case, we're making an exception. So the rules are kind of off the table. The general rules apply, but there'll be specificalities that come into play here for South Africa. So you need to understand that. But back to the point. The United States doesn't give a flying flip if you're one-legged, two-legged, three. Well, if you're three-legged, we're a little concerned. That might be some kind of defect. But one-legged or two-legged, if you're visually impaired, if you're hearing impaired, if you're thick and not very bright, or you're a genius, whether you're 2 or 92, it does not matter. If you're Christian, a Muslim, Jew, doesn't matter. Because if you're a Jewish Afrikaner, if such thing exists, then you would qualify. If you're a Muslim Afrikaner, if such thing exists, you would qualify. If you're brown, you would qualify. It does not matter. It does, and people when this thing started, oh, but Chris, we contribute so much. You know what? That's fantastic. But we don't care when it comes to refugee. We don't care if you're the next Elon Musk or you're the next ditch digger. It's not about that. It's the generosity of the American people helping people flee from a place in which their very existence is in peril. That's what the refugee program is about. And so all these questions I constantly get, to me, they're not amusing. It's sad because people just don't know. So I'm trying to share it. What you're putting together is kind of, tell me if this is a wrong description. It sounds like you're offering resettlement advice for people who come to America.
Yes, Colonel, that would be correct. Sam also reminded me we do have a Q&A on the memorandum that answers some of these common questions that you just said. You know, people that are asking the same question over and over and over, like, if I'm an old person or this or that. We do have a Q&A that answers that. We address those problems on our spaces, and if you go on our X page, I highly recommend it. We answer common questions every single day, and we do get the same questions as yourself to, you know, if I have one leg, can I still go? I'm really old, or this or that. You know, we do get those same questions. Things that we don't know is, well, you know, how much aid would be available for somebody who is frail or old? Will you, I suppose if you you have a degree and you have some resources, you may be able to resettle wherever you want to be. But perhaps if you, don't have those financial resources and you are vulnerable, perhaps you would be limited to a certain area, but we just don't know that. We really don't. But as soon as we do, of course, we're going to share the information. But right now, we're just trying to put out fires too, like yourself, saying, "Hey, listen, don't, jump the gun here. We don't know. You can't just assume things, So really dispelling some of that misinformation too is what we've been doing."
Yeah, no, it's a big part of it. And people ask, I want to go here, I want to go there. Well, I mean, all we can do is pull up the data and talk to people who have the experience in the past. So I pulled up the data so the president has an obligation legally to send Congress a report on the Refugee Resettlement Program every year. So the most recent one's for 2023. The 2024 one has not been submitted to my knowledge, or at least it's not publicly available. And so I looked through it. And of course, the place where most refugees are resettled is the most populous states that have the biggest absorptive capacity. So California, New York, Pennsylvania, Ohio, Florida, Texas, they're all in the top 10. And so people can't go to Hawaii. 0 people were resettled in Hawaii in 2023. And 0 people would like to go to Hawaii. Why? Because it's crazy expensive. You're not going to put a refugee in a place where you have to have $1 billion just to buy a burger at McDonald's. It's crazy. So can I go where I want to go? No, you'll go where the Department of Homeland Security sends you, where it can absorb you. That's why it's a Department of State program to get you in the country legitimately and vet you, and Homeland Security to put you into the country, into a place. Am I stuck there? No, it'll make you stay there. You can move. But let me ask you this question. As a refugee who comes here and is unable to repatriate any of your money from South Africa for whatever reason, or you had no money to begin with, how exactly are you going to move from Georgia to Ohio because you want to go to Ohio? Where's that money going to come from? You're getting money from courtesy of the taxpayer. We're giving you some money, but you're expected to work if you're able to work. Now, someone asked a question about medical a few minutes ago. We're not going to get into medical. Let me just cover that in about 90 seconds. I'll do as quick as I can. Medical system in America is non-existent. There's no system. It's a myth. It's a lie. Perpetrated by fraudulent politicians, including Barack Hussein Obama. There is no medical system in the United States. We have medical care in this country, which is comprised of private for-profit clinics and hospitals all over the country. We have it for Native reservations, sponsored and paid for the Department of Bureau of Indian Affairs. We have military hospitals paid for the Department of Defense. We have Veterans Administration hospitals paid for by the Veterans Administration. We have Lutheran hospitals and Catholic hospitals and city hospitals and state hospitals and every hospital you can think of. We have General Hospital if you want to watch television. We've got it all. Okay? There is no system. There's been an effort to digitize records, and all that's done, in my view, is put us vulnerable for thieves breaking into our personal data. So, how do you pay for it? Well, in America, historically, you pay for medical care on site, out of pocket, the day it happened, like 1930s, okay? Then we came up with World War II, and we had to employ all these women, and they paid them less money. And one way they got around not paying the men more money when they came back from the war, because 18 million men and women were in uniform in the Second World War. 18 million out of a country of 130 million. Think about that. Those 18 million came back to work, and they expected pay, and they couldn't pay them more, so they gave them benefits. And we started this tradition of giving you benefits, which included medical insurance. Those 18 million men and women were largely very healthy in their 20s and 30s. They came back to the workforce, so they had small medical bills. So it was inexpensive. But over time, as the population got bigger and older, we had challenges. So we have all kinds of systems. Some work, some don't work. Private medical insurance, which you often get through your employer. Private medical insurance, which you can pay for, which has become 3 and 4 times expensive, courtesy of Barack Hussein Obama's corrupt no child left behind. That's George Bush. The Unaffordable Care Act. That's what it was. It's ruined the insurance market. So we really can't answer your questions about that. You'd have to tell us, okay, I've been told I'm going to Oklahoma City and I'm going to arrive in the state. Oh, now we can talk. Okay, well, go to Blue Cross Blue Shield, get a job with Walmart. Then we can talk about your health care. But right now, it's just pie in the sky. I don't know where you're going to go. I don't know what you're going to do. I don't know what your circumstances are. Maybe you're wealthy. Then you don't need money. Look, the best health care on the planet is found right here in America. The best health care. If you got money. If you haven't got money, well, then it's a little bit different. Nobody's denied health care. By law, in every single state and territory, an emergency room must see someone who comes in. They must treat you. That's a fact. Notwithstanding anecdotal examples of somebody didn't get proper care, we can have that conversation. But the bottom line here is that people are panicking over something they shouldn't panic over. Those who have chronic diseases, it won't prevent you from becoming a refugee. You think about how callous and inhumane that would be. You come, Andrea comes, and her mother comes, and they both apply, and her mom's got type 2 diabetes. Like, she's 60. We don't want her. We'll take the young one. No, it doesn't work like that. Not for refugee. Now, you want to immigrate here. and you're 92 and you're broken and you're going to be a burden on us, probably not going to let that happen, okay? If you're 22 and you're hungry and you've had a history coming to America and going home and you want to work, different story. Okay, sorry, Andrea, but I needed to segue into that very quickly because I knew that was going to come up. Are you getting questions about medical? I'm sure you're getting a lot of them.
Yeah, Colonel, I get a lot of questions about medical. I don't feel very qualified to answer them. For myself and my family, of course, because my husband is military, we go through government healthcare. It's TRICARE. It's very good. But like you mentioned, if you do get a job, there is options. If you get a full-time job, I think it's over 40 hours, your employer is obligated to offer you medical insurance that will come out of your paycheck. But as a refugee, I would imagine there would be some help. If you, like you said, Colonel, when you come here just as an immigrant, it's a whole different story. It's actually really difficult, especially if you come with limited resources. But I'm assuming there should be some kind of help for refugees. I don't know if it's going to come out of Medicaid potentially, because I know Medicaid has a bunch of options for.
No, there's medical specifically for refugee. It's listed. And
Okay.
imagine this, one of my videos I did on refugee coming to America. Go to my Substack. One of my monitors can put the Substack link on there or the video to that, the one that says finance. I did a video on eligibility, then I did a video on background checks, then I did a video on finance. And I talk about all these different programs and how they cover it. So you can go find that, folks. It's frustrating because people keep asking the same questions. I put the videos up and clearly they're not looking at them. Somebody said solidarity and Afroform a joke. Well, good for you, Joe. This isn't a solidarity and Afroform conversation. I'd recommend you go to their channel and share that with them because we're not talking about them or to them today. We're talking to Andrea, who's with Amerikaners, about resettling in America, and she and her organization are trying to help some folks. Also, Anne Marie Nell, who means well, has been with me a long time, said you have to have a referral from U.S. No, you don't. No, you don't. We don't know that to be a fact. That is a standard practice, and it's a case of when we get refugees from Chad or from Uganda or from Kenya or from some other place where they're a legitimate refugee who's fled their country, we have to have a referral. We can't just get people. So that gives us starting basis. But South Africa will be a different situation. So for those who are telling me you have to have referral, what did we do in Cuba? What did we do in Bosnia and Herzegovina? Do you know what we did there? If you know what we did there, then give it as an example. But I know nobody knows. I know, but most people here don't know. The point is that we do not know. Yes, the norm has been for a refugee to have a referral, usually from United Nations High Commission for Refugees. But you aren't going through UNHCR. It's kind of like the media in South Africa. None of these Afrikaners have been going to America because the Americans cut all the money to UNHCR in South Africa. Well, the UNHCR in South Africa does nothing for South Africans. It's for the Somalis and for the Sudanese who are living in South Africa, who, by the way, Andrea, we, the American taxpayer, have been funding for 30 years. There's a guy on there the other day in Daily Maverick, and they're looking for sympathy. He came from the Congo 18 years ago. And he's been living in the Congo for 18 years, getting assistance from the U.S. government because the South Africans don't provide it. We're providing him living expenses. 18 years, he's got married. He's got 2 kids with a South African. I'm sorry. Have you ever heard of a job? Could you get off your bum and get out there? Why are we paying for a Congolese to live in South Africa? No one's paying for me. When I go there, I'd love a subsidy for my hotel. Then I could stay where Johan Rupert stays at. Come on, man. Come on. Don't make me sniff your hair like Joe does.
I have to agree with you there. I'm so thankful for Doge right now because we are, exposing so much of this fat that's going to all of these useless programs. And I saw somewhere on CNN they were like, "Oh, actually they were incorrect. We're not sending condoms to Gaza. It's actually Gaza, Mozambique." And I thought to myself, I don't want to send condoms to Gaza, Mozambique, and I don't want to pay for it. What's the point here? I just don't get it. So I'm very thankful for that. And you're right. I'm not sure how we ended up paying for this, but I suppose when you have a really large government, it just tends to get bigger and bigger and bigger. So that's a problem.
Well, it is a problem. So look, and you're right. It was the province of Gaza in Mozambique. And so they try to rubbish the whole story. And people get freaked out over the foreign assistance. So, look, when I started working in embassies, we were spending about $9 to $15 billion a year in foreign aid. We're spending close to $60 billion a year in foreign aid. And I'm not that old. And I haven't been doing this that long. That's a huge jump. Look, it's not a lot of money in a $30 trillion a year economy and a $7.4 trillion federal budget. It's not a lot of money. That's not the point, though. The point is that we're paying for things, and we got North Carolinians living in tents 7 months after a hurricane wiped out Western North Carolina. And you know, you got to take care of things at home first before you deal with this. Anyway, so let's get back to it. You sent me some notes here. I don't want to miss some of your notes here. Very, very prepared. By the way, as an interviewee, very prepared. It's rare that I get this sort of input from folks. Now that's going to sound ironic because I said that I wasn't able to get the proper banner up, but we had miscommunication there. Anyway, so you guys, your mission is to gather and organize to help a group of South Africans to be heard in the public media discourse, because so many people like Agri-SA and the government of South Africa and every single media outlet in South Africa are saying, "Oh, Afrikaners are not going to America; they're not interested." Well, we know that to be false, because if it wasn't the case, my audience wouldn't have tripled in size in about 5 weeks after years of struggling to get an audience here, providing the same sort of information. And also, I wouldn't be being asked the exact same question by 10,000 people. I can tell you anecdotally that at least 50 to 70,000 people on my channel have expressed interest in this, my channel alone, one little channel. So that's what you're trying to do. You're trying to clarify the workings of the program, but from the outside in, because it doesn't sound like any of you have worked inside the refugee program. You're trying to dispel misinformation, which I think is key. So that's kind of what your mission is, correct?
That's 100% correct, Colonel. You know, like I said, when we first started, it was just pretty much basic information, clarifying the workings of the program and providing people with resources about living in the U.S. But since then, we've had to expand, you know, our mission to dispel some of the misinformation, like you said. You know, the solidarity movement speaking as if they represent all of us or all of the Afrikaners, saying, you know, maybe they don't really want to go to the U.S. And so we think it's very important, if anyone is listening and you are an Afrikaner and you want to leave South Africa, please sign our memorandum. Like I said, we are currently in phase 2, which is trying to distribute the memorandum and getting our voices heard. And so the memorandum, just to summarize it real quick, is a formal, you know, acceptance, you know, and thanking President Trump for his EO allowing the resettlement of Afrikaners. And we try our best to give a definition of what we think an Afrikaner is. And Colonel spoke about this before too. It is broad, and we are trying to have a broad applicability. So we really encourage the policymakers to listen to the regular folks on the ground. Like, don't listen to whatever AfriForum is saying or what, you know, the media is saying. You know, this is really the people that this is for. So we were trying to make their voices heard. And then also we just reiterate and affirm what President Trump said about the racist laws in South Africa. As you know, over 100 triple BEE laws, AA laws that make it almost impossible for people to start new businesses, to get hired. Colonel, I can give you a personal example from my own life. Now, when I was in South Africa, I started studying medicine. I never finished medical school, but it took me an extra year to get into medical school over there because they have quotas for white students. So I was a A student, 90+% all of my subjects, great test scores, everything was perfect. But it took me an extra year to get in because I had to basically prove myself in, you know, a bachelor degree setting, you know, to just get so for the next year, they only accepted like 9 extra students that were white. So these are the type of things that people are dealing with. This is, you know, not even talking about the land expropriation that's going on, as you know, as well. So it's a really dire situation for a lot of people. You know, obviously not everyone's situation is the same, but like I said, we have over 15,000 signatories at this point. People that really feel like they want to leave South Africa, and we really want to give them the opportunity to be able to do that.
Well, listen, I got to admit, I'm very confused here, Andrea. I have it on no higher authority than Charlize Theron herself that there are only 44 Afrikaners. So where are you getting all this interest from? There's just 44 Afrikaners, no?
Yeah, I don't know where she got that information. I've heard her speak Afrikaans, but other than that, she seems like pretty much a dullard to me. I'm sorry that she's she's maybe not a good representation of who we are. If I would have to say a role model for Afrikaner boermeisies, I would refer to Tim Tebow's wife. She's excellent.
There you go.
Her name's Dee. Yes, she's great.
What's her name?
It's her name is Demi Lee.
Oh,
She was like on Miss Universe as well.
oh, but
Uh,
that's not Demi Lee Moore.
no, 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 not that one, not that one. Yes, Demi Lee Tebow now, I guess, and I guess she's about to have a baby too. So that's wonderful.
Yeah, no, it's I say that tongue in cheek because South Africa's Afrikaners aren't always well represented by rational people once they come to America. They're represented by celebrities all too often. It's interesting, but the connection is a lot deeper than people realize. So, for instance, Maroon 5, Adam Levine, his wife is from Namibia. She's a Burmaisi from Grootfontein, and a childhood friend of my friend Giselle, who's also there, the singer who lives in South Africa. It's a small world at times, how closely people are connected. Okay, so you got a core message here, and you are trying to get recognition of the persecution that which President Trump put out in his executive orders. By the way, it's the first time any developed country's government has ever actually recognized Afrikaners since probably the German Empire during the Anglo-Boer War over a century ago. So that's interesting. The purpose of memorandum, you've got one a direct message here. You say you got over 15,000. That's already updated from this which you put together previously, which said 12,000. And you're trying to correct the media narrative, which has been very dishonest. And, they do it all the time. So not to digress and not all about me, but it is my show. So it's going to be all about me for the next 30 seconds. No, but seriously. So Andrea, Newsroom Africa carried a story, an interview on yesterday, in which they had a gentleman come on, and I'm not going to talk about what he said or didn't say, that's such a name. But the host starts off by saying, last week, my colleague had Professor Amanda Gillis on the program from Stellenbosch. And this former colonel, I'm not a former colonel, I'm a retired colonel, I'm still a colonel, could be called to active duty at any moment. So let's first off learn how to be a proper journalist and research the terms before you start throwing about. But this former colonel in the U.S. has rubbished her for what she said about land claims. I didn't do that. I asked her. She in her interview talked about the U.S. had applied sanctions because AfriForum had come here. First off, I said, "What sanctions, Professor Roos? There's no gray listing. There's no embargo. There's no sanctions. There's no tariffs. There's no sanctions. All we've done is quit giving money to beggars. We've stopped aid. That's it. That's not a sanction." And then she talked about hate speech. I'm like, there's no hate speech anyway. So my point is that there's a lot of misinformation out there, and people are spreading and that's not by accident. That's lazy. Look, I'm not exactly a shrinking violet and unavailable. Trust me, my freaking WhatsApp, my Telegram, my email addresses, ones I don't share with people, are blowing up with thousands of people contacting me. And the next person that calls me at 2 o'clock in the morning is going to get moored. You think I don't know people in South Africa? They will show up at your house. Calling me at 3 o'clock in the morning is just rude, folks. I realize some people are desperate, but you need to think for a moment. I'm not currently in South Africa, and I'm getting dozens of phone calls. Now, to let you know, my phone always stays on silent because as a journalist, it's always ringing, and I can never have that doing. So calling me at 3 o'clock in the morning, all you're going to do is piss me off. It's very rude. I've been very patient, but it's going on. So the point here is that it's very frustrating with the misinformation that's going on out there. It's not a mistake, Andre. It's intentional. You were trying to be fair earlier, and I think it's good for you to be fair, but I'm telling you, a lot of this is intentional, simply misleading. It's not hard to find me. I'm on LinkedIn. Everybody knows where I'm at. I'm a public figure, whether I want to be or not. I was a public figure before. So, an objective journalist would have reached out to the person in question, asked for, their comment or their other side. But no, they just describe me in an effort to denigrate what I said. And then they lie about what I said. So the same thing is happening with the refugee program. You live in FEMA tents. Can you believe that one? I mean, FEMA is the Federal Emergency Management Agency. They're there to provide leadership, which they do very poorly at times, in a crisis, a natural disaster in America. Refugees coming into a refugee program is a formalized, budgeted, legal process in which we bring people in this country in a way we can handle them, except when Afghanistan fell apart and then Biden brought 160,000 here in 3 weeks, which is not how it's designed. But the point is that normally it's handled in a very organized fashion. Why would we put criminal alien invaders in hotels in Manhattan at our expense and then put people we asked to come here to protect their lives and help them in the tents? It doesn't make any sense. But people believe it's nonsense. Are you getting the same thing? FEMA tents and, gosh.
All the time, Colonel. It's literally every single day somebody has a comment like, "Oh, we're going to be all in tents and we're going to be forced to do this and that." And it's very frustrating. Answering the same questions over and over and again. We're happy to do that because we don't want people to believe that nonsense. We're really trying to, like I said, we're trying to advocate for people here. So it's frustrating to see, but the same thing is happening in the US media, and it's happened for a long time. I become so angry because my husband sent me all this links for the Washington Post and everything, and saying the most hideous things about Afrikaners in general, and who we are. And it's sad because the Afrikaner people have been through a lot, and it's been a really difficult journey for us. So to hear things like that, and even the former president calling all Afrikaners repugnant, it's very, very dehumanizing, and this campaign has gone on for a long time. So like you said, it may be intentional. It may be that people are trying to confuse people that are trying to come here, or to suggest that their life is going to be terrible. We've had some unsavory characters also say that, you're just going to be poor and you can't make it here. We get a lot of hate comments on our page too, but we're trying to fight through all of that and make sure that people are heard in that regard.
Isn't it ironic that at the same time that Afrikaners are being abused racially, I've heard stories of 12-year-old girls being called white monkeys in class on Friday, being taunted and attacked by other students just because of their skin color. This racism and bigotry is allowed to go on in South Africa, and the excuse is, well, historically disadvantaged. Well, I'm a little sick of hearing about that because the majority of South Africans were born after the ANC took power in 1994. Over half the population was born after that. Those responsible for whatever misdeeds or unfairness occurred are a dwindling number of people and dwindling influence and elderly at this stage. To blame people in South Africa today for what happened then is lazy, it's dishonest, and quite frankly, it's racist. It's racist, and it needs to stop. Most South Africans that I know, Andrea, whether they're white, they're black, they're brown, whether it's Tswana or they're Tsotho or they're Afrikaner or Portuguese or German South Africans or English-speaking South Africans or Xhosa, they just want to raise their family. They want to be successful. They want their kids to be able to grow up and be healthy and be wonderful. They want to be omas and opas and have, and be tanis and they just want to see their kids grow up in peace, and they want to worship the way they want to worship, whether they're Muslims, Christians, or Jews. And they don't give a flying flip about someone's skin color. That said, there's a lot of nasty, evil people, particularly in politics and the paid social media trolls, that their mission in life seems to be to divide South Africans. And sadly, in your community of Afrikaners, and more specifically the Boer community, there's a lot of those people who are there to divide. As I said many, many times, you get 10 Afrikaners in a room, you get 12 leaders. You get 10 Afrikaners in a room, you get 67 ideas. You get 10 Afrikaners in a room, and you're defeated and picked apart by the English, picked apart by the Zulu, picked apart by whomever's coming after you, because you're very good at dividing yourselves. And that's part of the problem here, is it not?
Yeah, definitely, Colonel. Like you said before, and I've heard something similar along those lines. If you put 3 Afrikaners on an island, within 10 years, you'll have 3 different communities with 3 different churches. It's unfortunately one of the things about our people that have been a problem just for us to stand together. We're fiercely independent people. And perhaps that's, goes along with the fact that we're pioneers. We moved to South Africa a long time ago. And so just taking a step like that, if you think to yourself, like what that would have taken, it is unfortunate. There are many, many different ideas, and one can only think that this situation with, people wanting to stay, wanting to go, and, discouraging people to go, it reminds me a lot of, and I'm sure you're well aware of this history, but at the end of the Second Boer War, where, it was, obviously the fight was over, okay? The scorched earth policies left a lot of Boers without homes. Their farmhouses were being burned down.
Sorry, Andrea, you said Second World War. You mean the Anglo-Boer War?
Anglo-Boer War, yeah.
You misspoke. The Second Anglo-Boer War. It sounded like you said Second World War. Okay.
Yes, I'm so sorry. Yes. At the end of that, a lot of farmers decided, I don't think we should be fighting this anymore. We may be morally correct or whatever, but we're going to go home and protect our families. And these people, they were considered, it's an Anglicanization of the world, but they called it henselpers, like hands up. So they were seen as like traitors. And I can't help but think, but maybe they were the smart ones, because they wanted to protect what they had. The most important thing you have is your family. I mean, at that point, they just didn't have the numbers. And so right now we see sort of the same kind of divide, where there are people that feel like, the way forward is an Afrikaner it's never going to happen, in my opinion, and I don't think it's a good idea. And then there are other people that are like, you know what, we should just go make a new life in the US. And the great thing about it over here is, you know, like you said, anyone can thrive here. People are equal; they have equal opportunities, and you have every type of opportunity to succeed. So that's kind of like how it feels to me where we are right now. So maybe that's a little bit of a serious analogy, but it is kind of what's happening.
Sorry, I was catching some in chat while I was multiprocessing. Unlike Microsoft, I can do that. I was multiprocessing here while you were chatting and looking at some of the chats. Somebody said they're tired of hearing about Afrikaners. That's fine, but then my question is, why did you tune into an Amerikaner broadcast then if you don't want to hear about Afrikaners? I mean, honestly, it's I don't mean to rubbish your comment there, but it's quite odd. Why are you here if you're tired of hearing about it? I mean, that'd be like, you know, I hate basketball. Here I am at the Lakers game. Okay, well, I'm glad you hate basketball. Glad you're Lakers game. All right, so I have here in front of my, as Rush Limbaugh used to say, my formerly nicotine-stained hands, except I never smoked, so not formerly nicotine-stained hands. But I have here in front of me your memorandum, which your group has put together. It's addressed to the Honorable Donald John Trump, President of the United States. Imagine that. I've heard of that guy before. And then Marco Rubio, Kristi Noem, and that would be the appropriate people, the President, the Chief Executive, the Secretary of State, who would promulgate this program to get people into the country, and Kristi Noem, who will be responsible for settling them in America. So you guys, obviously, you have some idea what you're doing because you're off to the right start there, having worked in the government. Then you talk about South Africans of European descent in your introduction, background, the discriminatory laws, the policies that have led to the suffering. You mentioned what happened in Zimbabwe. And then you say you're not looking for handouts. You bring skills and values, and that's all great. And that might help sell it to the politicians. But the program legally doesn't care. It doesn't make a distinction for that. But it's good you to make that point because because if you say yes, we have only 3 million type 2 diabetes and type 4 stage 4 metastatic lung cancer patients that we want to bring to America and burden you with that. That would probably turn off some politicians, and they would probably try to stop it. So it's correct of your organization to say, hey, listen, this is a group of people who can really contribute. But in the law, it really won't make a difference. But when it comes down to convincing politicians, that's smart. And you've got contact details down here. Amerikaners.com is your website. And then you've got an acknowledgement receipt. I don't know. Do you know if your memorandum has gotten to the President of the United States? Do you have any confirmation of that, or has it been sent already? Not to put you on the spot, but I think it's fair to ask that question.
Yeah, Colonel, to be quite honest with you, no, we don't know if there has been a receipt. I have just started working on phase 2 with, like I mentioned to you before, we are about 20 U.S. citizens. So so here's the problem. You can send letters all you want, but there is a probability that may land in some black hole. Some staffer may look at it and go, nah. So that's an issue for us. We will be sending out those letters pretty soon, but at the same time, what I'm trying to do is get a face-to-face with my congressional representative. Even a phone call would be great to make sure that, that message does get delivered. Now, of course, there are, nonprofits that also work with refugees. I've been hesitant to reach out to them because a lot of them I've gone through their bios and stuff, and I'm not sure they will be receptive to our message. Unfortunately, as you know, a lot of people in the US don't think that if your skin is a certain color that you can face any kind of discrimination. And I saw one field office in Miami, and I saw that they used to get funding from USAID, and I wasn't sure if that was an appropriate channel for me to reach out to. And then, of course, the other option that we have that we will be implementing soon is also we're going to be sending letters to the US Embassy in South Africa as well, just with our memorandum, people endorsing it. So like I said, as a civilian, I'm not a lobbyist, so I have to go through this traditional channels, and I'm just hoping for the best. So if there's anyone that would like to give some input on that, we appreciate that as well. We want to get our message out there, as best we can.
No, Andrea, I appreciate where you're coming from, because having worked in that world with non-government organizations, all too often there are do-gooder leftists whose view of the world is very skewed. They presume that people who have been deprived of sufficient skin pigmentation and therefore exposed to skin cancer at alarmingly high rates, like ourselves, cannot be the victims of discrimination, which is a total horse load. They also think that people with insufficient skin pigmentation can't be poor or be down on their luck. Well, that's just utter nonsense. The original poor that we know about, the ones that are written about in history, are the poor English living in filth-covered streets in England in the Middle Ages and such. That's where literature comes to us, so we know this. Now, it's. I think you're right. The people you're talking about, we call them hate wankers. They're hate wankers. That's what they're all about. They hate on folks, mostly white folks, and it's really sad to see that. It's unfortunate. But the problem is that when people sensationalize, it doesn't help. Somebody in the chat said there's 1.6 million Afrikaners living in squatter camps. That's simply not true. I appreciate that comment. That's simply not true. That doesn't help the narrative. Yeah, there are poor white South Africans living in squatter camps. Andrea, I'll never forget at the beginning of the COVID scam when SABC went to a squatter camp outside Pretoria that were only poor whites. And you see the destitution living in tin shacks, just like the folks in Soshanguve, just north of there. But it's only white folks and a couple color folks hanging it there. And the SABC reporter comes over and says, so can you tell us why you don't let black people live here? And this poor woman is like, looking at him like, what? You don't let poor black people live here? Poor people live here. No one's making a distinction about whether black or white. People gravitate towards alike. No one goes into Soshanguve or Alexandria or Kailichi and say, hey, how come you let poor white people live here? People tend to gravitate to the like. It's just natural. Muslims gravitate towards Muslims, Christians towards Christians. Unless you're Catholic, then you'll gravitate towards Protestants. But you get my point. And white folks tend to gravitate because it's human nature to go with the like, because we have an innate fear of the other. And that's just human nature. We wouldn't exist as a species if we didn't have that fear. Oh, hello, kitty cat. Don't. This is saber-toothed cat took your arm off. Yeah, that's danger. You have to recognize danger. Now, it doesn't mean the other is danger, but it's just the nature. Because back in the day, running around when we Neanderthals dominated Europe, those people came out of the Middle East. When we dominated Europe, we were friends with them. Next thing you know, they were killing us and raping our daughters, and we disappeared. You got to have a good, healthy fear of the other. And by the way, they look just like us, except they weren't quite as strong. Anyway, no, but seriously, I appreciate your hesitancy to deal with some groups because they have a filter that is unrealistic. I've dealt with these organizations, and I'm not going to mention by name, all over Africa, and they really have a warped view of the world. They mean well, but the well-meaning that they extend should be extended to all human beings. All Homo sapiens should have the same concern and love that they have for specific groups of people. I don't like organizations that target one group and say they're the only group that's suffering. I mean, if you make a group to help one particular group because that's you're affiliated with, you want to help, I get that. But if you do it to the exclusion and you ignore other people, then you're not legitimate. That's kind of my position on that.
Yeah, I would have to agree with you on that. That's really my hesitancy. It's sad that is the reality, but you have to be careful as well if you are reaching out to people in the media, whether it be, Fox News or a news outlet like that. You never know who has an agenda, what type of message they want to put out there. And so that's why, we've been filtering through some of these channels to make sure that we are going to be reaching out to the right people. We just don't want to just, send mass emails to everybody, and someone may look at it and it may not even be someone that we want to, have look at it. So yeah, it's just important to do a little bit of that, filtering through all of that. So we're going to be working on it this week. I just got back from South Africa, about 3 days ago. So I've, just been doing all of this stuff, trying to get everything together. So people, I just ask you to bear with me. Next week, I will go into full step 2 of delivering our memorandum, and we should be good to go.
All right, so that opens a door up, and let's talk about that. I'll talk about myself and then give you a chance to compose your thoughts on that. So, what is your intention? What is your objective? I mean, when people discover my channel, the leftist hate wankers, the black supremacists and white liberals, what's your agenda? And then just Afrikaners who are just generally suspicious because of their history. Whoa, what's this all about? What's this oak want? What's your game? Well, my game is quite simple. I have, and my viewers know, I've turned down at least 4 jobs paying $180,000 to $240,000 a year to do this. Now, one reason, to be interested, full disclosure, is that I'm not willing to give up a year of my life to go live in Mauritius or Madagascar for a year right now. 6 months, I might have done it, but a year, they would negotiate down to 6 months. If I needed money desperately, I would have done it. But the more compelling reason not to do it was because people were relying on my news program every day. And so I came to appreciate that. Do I make much money? No, I've lost my ass doing this. I mean, I've spent tens of thousands of dollars doing this. You know, I subsidize this out of my pocket, my retirement, and life savings. And that's my choice. To what end? Do you want to be famous? I've been famous. It's not all it's cracked up to be, trust me. So why are you doing this? Are you a racist? So why would I promote black, white, and brown people if I'm a racist? That I'm treating people equally and helping everyone. Well, what's this all about? Is it about super chats? Yeah, sure. You want a super chat? I could use the money. Helps pay my electric bill, pay my internet bill. So I do this because it's not being done. There are no or very few honest, independent. Not everyone, but most people have an objective. There are very few people who are actually trying to bring this stuff. And I always get a kick out of this, Andrea. Well, who are you? What do you know about South Africa? I will lay my knowledge and my expertise about South Africa up against virtually any South African, and we'll see how we do. Anyway, but who are you, an American? Go back to America. Well, okay. Well, then why do you have South African historians who are commenting on America, and South African politicians and South African and political scientists telling you what America's like when we got Ronnie Lamola saying that the U.S. can expropriate property without compensation when it isn't true? I can be an expert on a country and not live there. So that's my objective, which is going to give me a chance to give you a chance to answer. What are you guys all about here? I mean, look, from the very beginning, I cautioned people on the first broadcast on February 7th about the refugee program. Right after Trump announces, within the first 10 minutes, I said, be careful. This will bring out scammers. This will bring out the phishing attacks. This will come out the hucksters, the shysters. People are going to try to make money off you. Refugee resettlement is kostenlos, as we say in Germany. There is no cost to it. You do not need an immigration lawyer because you're not immigrating. You do not need an attorney because you didn't commit a crime. You do not need a consultant. You do not need money. You do not need a whole host of things. You may need a passport. We don't know. Those people who fled from Sudan and wound up in Chad have nothing. They get documentation from the UNHCR. So why are you guys doing this? I think I know the reason, but I give you a chance to answer the question because people are very suspicious. They're suspicious of me, and that's fine. You know, you're right to be cautious when someone comes at you with this. But you're here watching my content. I didn't come in your living room, so I'm not. If I asked anybody to give me their personal details, tell me where they're at, give me their birth date, their identity documents. I've never done that. Did I offer to put you on a list? No, there's no list. Are you guys offering a list? And the reason I say this before you get to it, Andrea, is that the South African Chamber of Commerce in the USA got requests. For whatever reason, people flooded their servers the first 3 days. That's Saturday, that's Sunday, and that Monday. And they reported 5,000, 10,000, 17,000 requests for interest in the program to an organization that has nothing to do with refugee resettlement. It's the only place people thought they could go. And then the government told them not to do it anymore. I interviewed Neil Diamond. He's like, oh, no, we were asked not to do it anymore. Okay. So they have people's email addresses, and now they're telling people things. And a lot of what they're telling people runs contrary to what people think the program's all about. So they don't trust them for whatever reason. So why are you guys doing this? 20 American citizens who are South African origin, who are trying to create something which appears to me to be an information site to advocate on behalf of those who want to come from South Africa as part of the refugee program to resettle in America and offer advice on what it's like here and experiences. Did I get it in a nutshell?
Yes, 100% correct. And let me just clear the air. We do not ask any money for any of our services. Everything is 100% free. I think it's a great injustice to ask people money that have been through so much. And like you mentioned before, this is a free program. Refugee program is entirely free. You don't need to pay a lawyer to do anything for you. This is 100% gratis. It's all free to you. But just to get back to your original point, Colonel, why do we do this? Me and the ladies who I work with, we're all Christian, and I honestly see this as our life mission. For me, it's almost like my life mission. I really would like to let my fellow Afrikaner have the same opportunities as what I had over here. I've made a success out of my life. I've met my husband here. I live in safety. I don't have to fear for my life. I love running. I go out running. I don't feel unsafe. And I think this is the greatest country on earth. And I would like to give Afrikaners the opportunities that I've had. So broadly speaking, of course, I can't speak, for my colleagues, but I think we're all on the same page. We're trying to help people, resettle, giving them free resources. Obviously, this kind of stuff helps, the other two Afrikaner ladies too, because they also wish to resettle. So it's mutually beneficial to them as well to have information about, what are nice states to live in. But I can say from my side, I'm a concerned person, concerned citizen. I'm an Afrikaner, so of course I have, love. Not that I have love for all people as a Christian, but this is just something that's a personal mission of mine, and I hope to help people where I can. I mean, you can check my X page. That's literally what my bio says. I'm just helping people where I can. So that's from my side, the reason why we're doing this. And like we talked extensively about the misinformation and hate that's been directed at the Afrikaner people. We're trying to, combat that and encourage people to go, because I think this is a fantastic opportunity. I think you should take it. It's a gift. It's a phenomenal gift from President Trump, and something that people should seriously consider if they can.
Sorry, people keep asking for a poll here, and I think it's a silly poll, but I'll put it up just because. Yeah, quit asking for the poll. I'm putting it up there. I think it's a silly poll, but I'm going to put it up, okay? All right, the poll's up. Have you signed it? What does that matter? I mean, what are you trying to find out here? What are you trying to gauge? I appreciate you asking a question, but it's a silly poll. Anyway, I put it up. So, all right, so that's where you guys are coming from. It sounds like you're coming from a place of love. That's what it sounds like to me. So let me ask you, we'll shift a little bit here. I hope you got a little bit more time here. Let me ask you about your experiences. Okay. All right. When you came to America, you immigrated here, was it your first time coming to the country, or had you been here previously?
I've been here previously on vacation with my family. Naturally, we went to Disneyland because who doesn't? So, that was my only prior experience. And ironically, we ended up in Florida as well. And really the only reason why I ended up in Florida was I already had a bunch of college credits. So when I was applying to universities over here, some of them would accept international credits and others wouldn't. So the only two options that I was left with was Baylor in Texas and a small college over here that were willing to transfer my credit. So that's how I ended up in Florida. And I guess I've just stayed here. The weather's great. I think it's a great place to live. Well, you know what? My husband has a lot of trauma from living in Chicago before. So he, I would like to live somewhere, with some seasons. Occasionally,
I should think your husband's suffering a lot of trauma from having been forced to serve in the Air Force, but that's a whole other issue.
Well, yeah, naturally that as well. But, it's funny you say that. He joined the Air Force so that he could get out of Chicago. So, so I guess it did help him a little bit. So there you go.
All right, so you'd been here before you came over, and being able to go to school had played a role in that. Okay, and that's important for people to understand. Look, the education system, which is an Anglo-based system that you have in South Africa, is very different than we have in America here. So we get asked a lot of questions. My kids, what will happen to them? Look, if you come over here and your son or daughter is in high school, first or second or third year of high school, and they come here and you go to a local school and they require them to do the year over, relax. First off, if they're an athlete, they're going to have a huge advantage. They're already more experienced, and they're going to be one of the top athletes. So keep that in mind. So if you want a scholarship for university, that's advantageous. That's the first thing. Plus, you've got to be here a period of time in order to get in-state tuition if you're going to be in a state. So that's another year that they live here, so they can qualify for in-state tuition. And oh, by the way, it's an adjustment. Matric is not graduating from high school. It's not the same thing. What you guys do on that side is very different. And besides, while our educational outcomes have diminished in America on whole, we do have pockets of excellence still, but we certainly don't have the 30% program. So everybody here is better than 30%, just saying. So you've got to adjust. Okay, Andrea, what was the biggest culture shock? Because even though you've been here before, there had to be something when you got here. You finally learned to drive on the correct side of the road by moving to America. So I'm sure that was a challenge. But what was the biggest culture shock for you as an Afrikaner coming and settling in America?
It's a very good question.
Well, of course, it's a good question. That's why I asked it.
I have to think really hard about that. I guess just, something that's very different here is would say the restaurant culture, specifically, referring to like the fast food that's here. I know Bobby Kennedy is working a little bit on a lot of that, but just seeing like a fast food restaurant on like almost every corner of the street, that was something very, very strange to me. In South Africa, you've been to South Africa. It's definitely not as much. So that was definitely something to me. I'm trying to think of something that really shocked me. I can think of examples of things that were quirky to me, but I actually found my transition here like pretty easy in that regard. I think, we're all kind of come from a similar background, mostly, Judeo-Christian. We all speak English too. So so those things were kind of similar to me. I can't really think of something off the top of my head that was like very, very strange to me. Maybe if you have a comment, you can enlighten me on anything someone is saying, but that was strange to me, just the restaurants. Oh, and something else that was very strange to me is how late the shops are open, and when they're open. They're in South Africa, if you go on a Sunday, boom, like 4 p.m. everything's closed. So when I was just back in Cape Town, I was like, oh, I can quickly run to the Dis-Chem, and go get a prescription. And I got there, and everything's closed up, and I'm like, wait a second, like what's going on here? And then something that's really cool, I guess it's not a good thing, but just ordering something on Amazon and it like shows up at your door, almost within hours. Sometimes it's like, people in South Africa, if they came here, they would freak out if they saw that. I mean, it's actually quite spectacular, the amount of organization and efficiency in this country. It's great.
Well, and the lies about America, our infrastructure is collapsing, falling apart. That's total nonsense too. An infrastructure in a country the size of a continent is a challenge to maintain, with millions of miles of highways, roads, and bridges. So I think it's unfair. You hear this all the time, but I mean, look, South Africans don't drive on the right side of the road. They don't drive on the left side of the road. They're driving what's left of the road. So it's a little different than America.
Yeah, there are some areas where you almost want to just drive on the side of the road and not on the actual road. I remember going from where the Kruger National Park, drove all the way to Botswana with my family, and the road was in such an atrocious condition. I was like, wow, I don't even know how to do this. Like, where are we going to drive? It was such a harrowing experience, honestly.
Yeah, I get a kick out of South Africans. A couple comments coming about Americans driving the wrong side of the road. Okay, look, fine. You want to say that? I know you're being cheeky, but 85% of the world drives on this side of the road. We invented the automobile. We invented the highway system. So I think we have first dibs on that. Only Japan, some countries in Africa, and the Anglophone countries drive on the wrong side of the road. Anyway, but you can come after us for some other things. We definitely have some odd things in America, that like using the imperial system or the standard American equivalent. But people keep talking, Andrea.
By the way, it got us to the moon, so
What's
that's
that?
something. I said it did get us to the moon, so that's good.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, the standard American equivalent did get us to the moon successfully, but we do use metrics here. People just don't realize that it's every day. It's there. All right, so that's the oddest thing, which is not really. So it wasn't much of an adjustment for you. In the interest of full disclosure, what's been the most frustrating or disappointing thing coming to America? I mean, it's not a perfect place. We have our challenges. What's been the thing that's annoyed you the most, other than road tolls?
Honestly, the thing that's been annoying to me, and I think a lot of South Africans would concur with me on this one, is that it's actually surprisingly a very regulated country. There's a lot of boxes you'll have to tick to do certain things, and we're used to, obviously, the amount of freedom that you get in South Africa. Also, there's a lot of corruption and stuff that goes on, but man, you've got to fill out forms here like crazy. And the other thing that people may find strange is an ironic thing about a lot of Americans, and I'm not saying everybody, but a lot of Americans actually are groupie people. They like living in HOAs and houses that kind of look similar and, do the same thing. You'd think, if you're American, you'd be like, I'm like out there, I'm going to do something completely different. So people may look at that, and maybe this is just Florida because there's just a lot of that going on here. But people tend to kind of want to do the same things and, live in the same type of communities, and these HOA hellscapes that they have. My mother was a realtor here, and these people act like they're kind of like little presidents of their community, and they're
little Nazis. They're little Nazis, yes.
Yes, and you have your trash can out a little too long, and some lady is writing notes and fining you for this and that. I would say that would be a frustrating part for people. I mean, my personal opinion would be don't live in an HOA, but I mean, I can't, control what you're doing. Obviously, this is a good thing for your home value if you live in an HOA because it's kind of standardized. Things look the same. No one next to you has a pink house, which would definitely devalue your property value. But that was something a little frustrating to me, if I can put it that way. People are very creative in South Africa. We have like all kinds of, you've probably seen the Cape Dutch architecture in Cape Town, and, just creative. And I feel like it seems like sometimes a lot of Americans, don't want to, not saying the majority, of course, the most innovative technology comes from this country. But ironically, sometimes when you meet people, they seem like very in the box type of people. It's weird. That's just been my personal experience, so I can't really speak for you or anyone else, but just from my perspective.
Well, from that perspective, just to put a little context in that. First off, it all comes down to resources, what people can afford, and there's a reason why people live in homeowner association. And Florida is not an example for America. That's a retirement state. That is. I mean, it's got more retirees than anybody else, and golf courses than anywhere else, and hurricanes than anywhere else. So Florida is a bad example for America when you try to look at what America is. It really is. I mean, you've got a state full of transplants. Many states aren't full of transplants. I go to Iowa, there are very few transplants. The people who live there have been living there for 150 years, 200 years or longer, and their families have been there a long time, for the most part, generally speaking. So the thing is, you have to look at this. Americans, when we built homes, when Europeans settled here, they built them out of stone. It was New England. That's the readily available building material. And so they used stone. They made durable houses. And as they moved further west, lumber was the more common thing than stone. So lumber became the standard, and log cabins became what people built. And then as the country expanded and more people came along, over time things changed. In the 20th century, we moved more along after the World War II. We went to these planned communities like Levittown, which was built. And that's where Bill O'Reilly grew up, in Levittown. And so these were planned communities built for veterans coming back from the war, affordable small houses, one level ranch sort of houses. Then we got to the 60s, and they had this building boom in places across America, and all the houses looked the same. They were all a certain type, these ranch houses. Then the 70s had these kind of Brady Bunch 2-level houses where the top floor overhangs a few feet, hideous looking things, but that was the preferred style of developers then. Then we move on. Now we're in this ticky-tack, everything looks the same, homeowner association situation. But I will tell you that it's not my ideal. If I had my ideal, I would be living 5 kilometers from where I currently live on a piece of land that costs $50,000 an acre, which I cannot afford, overlooks the valley, and I would have a German Swiss wood framed house with a deck where I put my flowers out on the side, and that would be my home. And it would have a fireplace. We built out of stone and wood. But I don't have $3 million. So I have to buy one of these ticky-tack houses that's built in an area so I can afford to pay the outrageous mortgage, so I can be a debt slave to a bank for 30 years. So it's a matter of circumstances. I don't think Americans necessarily like these things. In Florida, they probably like it, a Boca Chica resort. We go there and go out to hang out at the senior center, that sort of thing. But Americans will live where they can afford to live. I was driving through the local town here yesterday, looking at some of the very inexpensive and poor quality housing that some people live in, realizing, looking at that's what those people can afford. That's why they live there. It's not by choice. I mean, there is a mountain just located 2 kilometers west of me. And that mountain actually alters the weather around here, which is weird. But that mountain, when I moved here, I didn't realize that there were plots on the side of the mountain going up. They were selling them. If I had known that, I would have bought a plot there and tried to build a place there. But I bought this place and wound up with this debt. And so now I sit down here in the valley and look at the rich people up on the hill, and I wish I was one of them. But my point is that it's circumstances. So we have to be careful about Americans. I hear this from a lot of people from overseas. Oh, Americans build all their houses out of wood. Yeah, because we've let 50 million people flood into this country, and we have to build houses. And, there's only so much stone. There's only so much material. So these things change over time. So I think that has an impact on it. So anyway, and then we've got row houses in Maryland. They were such tight. They were like this, and they were dock workers and people who worked in, the fish packing industry and the crab industry and stuff like that. They could only afford a certain amount, and these builders built all these things and made a fortune from rents. So it's all a consequence of when and how things are done. Now the norm is for bigger, larger plots in larger communities. Where I live at, it's a small homeowner association, and the rules are almost non-existent. The only annoying rule is you can't put an outside shed unless it meets a certain standard. It has to be the same pattern as your house. Anyway, so I don't have an outside shed. Anyway, but but they don't have stupid rules, and I pay like $90 a year, and it hasn't changed. And that pays for the snow removal, and it pays for the paving of the streets when that was finally done, because this was not a finished development. But I bought a place because there was a horse ranch on one side, a valley with a creek on the backside, and a public park on the other side, so nobody else can build here. Anyway, all right, so back to your organization. What do you hope to get to now? Are you just going to keep collecting signatures? Or you said you're going to try to reach out to legislators, and that hopefully will have some impact to get the word out, because a lot of people are proclaiming to speak for South Africans and saying nobody wants this offer. So I presume that those who want the offer are going to say, well, that may be true, what they're saying, but look at all these people are saying they want to come to America.
Yeah, I think a victory for us would be a successful delivery of our memorandum. And, if somebody's willing to listen to us, let a large amount of people that would be considered Afrikaner into the United States, that would be a victory for us. And that's really our goal. And then, like I said, just providing support as people, move along, and, just fighting against some of that disinformation, which we already are doing, so I guess that would be considered successful. But, we also have to wait, like you said, for President Trump's EO, for the guidelines to come out. But if there's any way that we can influence that and make sure that, it is my personal opinion, Colonel, I think that a lot of people will qualify for this, but we just want to make sure people are panicked. People are reaching out saying, will I be able to go? And that's really the concern for us. We want to make sure that they do have the ability to go. So that would be a victory for us.
Well, all righty. Interesting conversation. As I said, some people, my audience is pretty good today, but sometimes I get guests on, shut up, let your guests talk. And you and I talked beforehand just briefly. I'm like, it's not that kind of interview. It's a conversation, and we share ideas. We talk back and forth, and hopefully both learn something. I've learned something about your organization, what you're trying to do. It's rather flat, small, and you're trying to help people out. It sounds like that. So I've put the link in the chat, and as has one of my moderators. You can go there and check them out. If you want to sign their memorandum, you're welcome to do that. They're not asking for any money, so it's no harm, no foul. You can look at it and sniff around for yourself and see if it's for you. If it's not for you, then move along. But don't rubbish what they're doing. It sounds like they're trying to help people. I think you'll probably agree with me if I say the following. There are a lot of people out there trying to scam people, particularly now. And we also have people who are misleading. We had a Canadian consultant go on television in South Africa recently, and he said that he tried to rubbish the refugee offer, saying, what are the Americans up to? It seems to be nefarious. Asylum. It's not asylum, buddy. It's not asylum. It's refugee status. You can only be an asylum seeker if you're illegally in the country. Then you apply for asylum. That's how it works. Refugees are very different. And he's rubbishing America, saying, well, Canada. Yeah, Canadian immigration. You're not talking about taking refugees. And what about immigration? That means we have to pay consultants and lawyers to get that processed. And what are you in? Oh, you're in the consultancy business. Funny how that works. Anyway, so folks, I appreciate the skepticism on people's part. Do your due diligence. It's up to you as an individual. It's your responsibility. What ultimately happens to you is on you. And so that's all we can say. So, Andrea, I always give my guests a chance to get their final thoughts in and whatever they want to say. We've talked a little bit about your experiences here in America. I'm going to admonish you now. Your child is young. And if you don't teach your child Afrikaans, we're going to come down and give you a PK. You're going to blitzem you at some point. You must teach your child Afrikaans. Otherwise, that is lost. If it's important to you, make sure your child or children, if that continues down the road, speak Afrikaans. But anyway, your chance to share with us. And you didn't tell us where you're from. You said something about Cape Town, but I didn't. You don't have to tell me you're from Khayelitsha or Monenberg or Sea Point or Rondebosch. But I mean, I don't know if you're even from the Western Cape. I'm just curious where you're from because I don't detect that West-Transvaal accent there when you speak in English. So if you don't mind sharing that, and then give us your final thoughts and tell us a little bit about. Mention the website. Anything you want to do, the floor is yours. I do this with my guests. All right, you've got the floor.
Well, yeah, first of all, okay, just to clear things up, I'm from Pretoria. I know I don't sound like that. I knew it. Yes. I was born in Pretoria, moved around a bit with my parents, and the reason why I landed up in Cape Town, the last portion, was I went to Stellenbosch University. So that's where I was, and I think it's a great place, by the way. It's such a shame, but it is. It's really nice to go visit there as a tourist as well, if you want to do that. And yeah, like you mentioned before, please, to anyone who's watching this, do not give anybody any money that is claiming to check over your documents or, making sure that everything's lined up for the refugee program. This is a free program. Our resources are free. And if you really feel like you want to come to the United States as an Afrikaner, I really, really, really urge you to sign our memorandum. And we're getting that document out as soon as we can. And, stay connected on our socials. We have spaces there all the time, too. And, on Colonel Chris's channel as well, he gives really helpful information. If you have any anxiety, somebody's telling you, well, you can't do this, or you're going to be living in a tent or whatever, just ask us. We will answer your questions as best as we can. And don't listen to opinions from lawyers from America's hat. They don't represent us. So, the Canadians can stay out of this. But I just want to say this is a cause that's really, close to my heart, and I'm trying to do the best I can. Like I said, I'm just a person. We're kind of a small organization, but we're doing what we can for the Afrikaner people, and we're trying to get as many people as possible to come to the United States. It's the greatest country in the world. It's fantastic to live here, and I want that for everyone. I want your family to be safe, to be able to live in the United States. So that's really all for me. And I would just want to say thank you so much to Colonel Chris for hosting me and doing such a great job with this interview. I think you're a very good interviewer. You get to the point, and you're putting valuable information out there for your listeners too. So just thank you so much for me. Again, my name is Andrea, and our organization is Amerikaners.com. You can find us on X at Amerikaners 2025. And if you want to sign our memorandum, it's at www.amerikaners.com. Thank you so much.
You're very welcome. Listen, I have to say that I'm really impressed. We've really converted you to an American. That's awesome, even if you call yourself an Amerikaner. Also, I mean, look, you said such lovely things about America, and with the misfortune of living in Florida, and you're still impressed with America. That's amazing. I mean, if someone can survive Florida and think America's great, then we must be amazing. Anyway, but seriously. All right, Andrea, thank you so much for joining us. If I could get you to, when you drop off, just stay in the Zoom session for a couple minutes, because I'm going to wrap up and I want to come back and chat with you a couple things very quickly, okay? So just if you could keep it open, is that all right?
Perfect. I'll keep it open. I will just leave this conversation and keep the tab open. Thank you so much.
All right, and we'll chat just as soon as I close out. Okay, thank you very much, Andrea. Right. Okay. All right, folks, that's Andrea from Amerikaners, a sort of interview that I don't typically sort of do. I got to put her in the waiting room, actually. There she goes. She found. Okay. Thanks for tuning in. Listen, if it's not for you, it's not for you. If you're interested, you're interested. That's great. You want to go check out their site? Check out their site. I'm not endorsing. I'm not rubbishing them. They asked to come on, and I hadn't done an interview like this previously because I'm not the refugee guy. I'm an independent journalist, and I'm just trying to cover these things objectively. So I found that interesting conversation. I hope you did as well. We gave the link. We put the 830 people voted in the poll. Let's take a look at that real quick before we wrap up. So half of you signed up for it, okay? Or you have signed. Okay, so there you go. All right, so that's interesting. I didn't think it was a particularly interesting poll, but I guess some of you thought it was. So there you go. All right, I'm going to wrap up here. My news would normally start in 19 minutes. I'm going to have to probably push it to the bottom of the next hour, and so I'll apologize ahead of time. But I've been busy with this morning. So thanks a lot, everybody. There'll be a new banner that goes up after this with their logo, and the social media links will go below the description. Didn't have that information available, so hang in there, and I'll be back here shortly with the news. Thanks to my guest. I hope you enjoyed it, folks. And we'll be right back with the news shortly. Thanks a lot. God bless.